Welcome back to Chat Chit. We're back with AFL team reviews in the off season. This time it's North Melbourne. So we know the story with North Melbourne. It's 4 straight years of being a bottom two team, despite everything that was said about West Coast being the worst team we've seen in absolute ages.
They challenged them.
Throughout this year. They challenged them, ended up tying with them on points.
Probably would have preferred to lose to them.
Yeah, if they could have gotten that number one pick. But it's hard to put it to one thing. It's a whole organization situation, and they have to find a way to fix it. They do seem to have some pieces now in their team that are building. And what do you have to say about their offseason? Because I know that that's contributing to their cause that they're trying to force right now to improve.
Well, North Melbourne have been treated like the AFL's golden child almost in the last few years in terms of picks and what they've received, which I'll let you speak about in a second. But I'll just talk about their trade period quickly. So they got Dylan Stevens from the Swans, a player that we were. I think I was definitely a fan of. I'm not sure about you.
I don't know if he'll add much to North Melbourne.
Yeah, they didn't give up too much for a guy that was the fifth pick a few years ago. They got Zach Fisher. They got Bigger Nguyen from Richmond. They lost Todd Goldstein. They lost Ben Mackay, but they were given pick 3 as compensation. Now, I've never actually understood exactly how compensation works, and I know you've done some research into it, so I'm interested to know exactly how they've managed to pick up pick 3 for Ben Mackay.
Yeah, well, there are those that oppose compensation picks in general. They would say, if you're getting compensation for people leaving your club, work on retaining people at the club. If you're receiving compensation picks because you're performing poorly, work on performing better.
Well, they've also when someone leaves your club, they are also getting off your wage. But like you're not paying for them anymore. So it's interesting that they get the compensation for a pick, but they also don't have to pay for the play. Anyways, I like you tweaking.
It is not quite as simple as say bigger market sport leagues like in the US you have the NBA and NFL. There would never be any dream of compensation like that because the money's so big that they can just pick up free agents and make these big trades, and the players don't have much of a say in that. But obviously in the AFL, players have to agree to trades for the most part. And as AFL is becoming a bigger market, that's shifting. But it is a bit different, and so you can justify some compensation picks. But I personally don't think you can justify quite what North Melbourne have received over the last few years. To detail that, on September this year, just talking about what they've received this year, before the Ben Mackay trade, they received were granted by the AFL 3 end of first round draft picks over the next 2 years, and that was purely for poor performance, for basically them as a club presenting that they have been trying to do things to improve. It's not working. We need help. And honestly, I don't know if I was the AFL, I'd say that was a good enough argument to receive compensation picks, but it's happened, and hopefully North can make the most of them. The actual quote from the AFL is, North Melbourne has faced considerable challenges in recent years, having not finished higher than 17th on the AFL ladder in the 4 seasons since 2020. The club presented to the AFL on how assistance can help the club potentially improve its on-field performance. So there you go. What do you think?
I mean, from what it sounds like, it's almost like they're just throwing it away until they just somehow string something together. Like, just if the season's not going well, it's fine. We'll just complain to the AFL. We'll get some more draft picks in. I mean, this season, they've got pick 2, pick 3, pick 15, pick 17, and pick 18. 5 first-round picks in a team, by the way, already stacked with players who were drafted in the first round.
Yeah.
Also,
high in the first round.
High in the first round. A team that can't hold on to these big players because it's like the club culture is, it's fine. The season's not going well. We'll get some more picks. We'll go again next year. I mean, they've brought in Premiership A-list coach Alistair Clarkson, who didn't coach a lot last year. When he was coaching, it seemed like there was a bit more of a buzz, and they had a pretty good win percentage when he was coaching, actually. Like a few years ago, for example, they drafted Jason Horne-Francis. He left pretty quickly, and you could see throughout his year, even being a first-year player, the sort of dissent and not willing to play for the club that he was starting to show. Like he was almost wanting to get out of there straight away. So as an exceptional player, as a guy that's going to get drafted in the first round, 2, 3, 15, 17, 18, probably not a club you want to stick around at unless they start to change and move these performances around. And at least for me, I mean, I've got North Melbourne finishing in 17th again, a team that, honestly, I think it's 18th and 17th and 18th, then it's between 16th and 10th, and then it's like a top 9 for me. And I think North Melbourne have a huge problem if they can't break that gap between the next big bunch of teams. I'm interested to know where you have them for next year.
Yeah, I have them in 17th as well. I just wanted to add one more point earlier. A final point on the compensation picks. We already do have... it's not like I don't believe in any sort of balancing mechanism for teams that are struggling, but we have that balancing mechanism in the draft. If you finish bottom, you get the first pick.
Yeah.
But anyway, moving on from that, I did think that in terms of their actual performance as a team, going away from the organisation and the club as a whole, but just how they've played on field, I thought that there were promising points last year, but it dropped off towards the end. It looked at the start like there was some promise, obviously, with the 2 on the trot, but then they only won 1 game from their last 21.
They did have some close games. They should have been the Swans in that one game when they made an extra change. The 76 changes in the 75,
That was embarrassing as a Swans fan that day, but we just got across the line. It doesn't matter which way. The scorecard doesn't paint any pictures. Anyway, I agree with you that I think they will probably be in 17th, closer to West Coast than they are closer to 18th than they are to 16th.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I can't see them getting more than 4 wins.
I can. I disagree with that. I thought they showed some promise, and they have certain strengths, which is they have strengths in big players. A couple of big players like Nick Larkey and Luke Davies-Uniacke both seem like absolute superstars.
Sheasel as well.
Harry Sheasel. Those were a few shining lights in their team last year. But outside of that, I don't think that they're just empty outside of that. They have a lot of really, really solid players. The issue, I think, is that those players seem to all play similar roles in terms of running skilled players. For example, Aaron Hall, Bailey Scott,
Stevenson,
Jaden Stevenson, Taron Thomas. He was starting to play well in the back end of the year. Bring in Zach Fisher and Dylan Stevens. Harry Sheasel,
you're right. You're getting the same sort of player over and over again.
Yeah, and when you look at where they are the weakest, it's the fact that Nick Larkey has no support aerially in the forward line. Their key backs are maybe the weakest in the competition. The more I think about it now, probably the weakest in the competition. And in terms of trying to shore that up, they picked up Griffin Logue last year, who was okay, but big injury, but they need more than that.
Well, I don't know. They're going to have to draft very well in the defensive region.
I think they need to draft key position players.
I mean, the 4 wins can be shifted a lot depending on if they draft well. And with the picks that they've got, I wouldn't be surprised if they make a play for pick 1.
Yeah.
But it's also they could go for some double bluff thing with West Coast. We're not really sure because he's Harley Reid. If he gets drafted to West Coast at pick 1, it's probably going to leave. To be honest, the way he said he wants to be in Victoria, he wants to play there. So that's another story that's going to develop.
And I feel like West Coast are not in a position to where they can afford to take that risk.
Well, they've only got 1 pick in the first round, but we'll get on to West Coast in a few videos' time. But yeah, Anyways, that's a really interesting story, and I'm interested to see how that develops.
Yeah.
Anyways, North Melbourne in 17th. Both got North Melbourne in 17th. Really interesting draft night. I'd love to see North Melbourne actually start to perform. Interestingly, in a previous video, I had Nick Larkey to win the Coleman. So, like you said, they're not short of talent. And just any sort of support they can get to him would be huge. I think behind Curnow, probably the best tall forward in the competition.
Yeah, him or Jeremy Cameron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
different players.
And especially if Nick Larkey can get some sort of service where he's not 1v2ing week in, week out, then I think he can be a massive player and definitely chase down the Coleman this year. Anyways,
absolutely.
That's it for us today. We'll see you all in the next one. Thank you. Bye.